Hello, my name's Lisa. I'm at Nolan's. I'm one of the consultants here. Apologies for the delay in getting started on the webinar for Advanced Bank Reconciliation. Your patience is really appreciated on that. So let's get started, and we'll start to work through the slides here for what we're going to be covering during this presentation. So the webinar is going to last around 30 minutes. If you do have any questions, please put a chat down on the sort of right-hand side, and then I will answer any questions as we go along, or if I don't at that time, then I will at the end of the webinar. So please just sort of put your chat down on there. Okay, so first of all, we'll just cover sort of what is ABR. So ABR, Advanced Bank Reconciliation, is a tool that allows you to reconcile your bank statement to the general ledger transactions that have been processed through the system. This is going to include any of the transactions that are posted directly through to the GL, as opposed to just the transactions that have gone through your sales ledger or your purchase ledger. So this is typically how the standard bank rec within Great Plains would work. So you would only be able to see the transactions that you process through the subledgers. With the ABR, it allows you to look at everything that's gone through the GL and against your specific GL code, which is assigned to your bank accounts that you've got set up in Dynamics. It has an intuitive interface that allows you to see transactions side by side. So on the left, you'll see your GL transaction, so everything that's processed through against your cash account, and anything, and then on the right-hand side is what has been brought in by your statement. So you can just have a tick-back exercise of those GL transactions and your statement transactions. You don't have to enter the statements manually. There is an import bank statement that within ABR with an intuitive tool that allows you to match the statement output to those fields within the ABR product. So you just line up the columns that you've got within your statement against the columns that you have on within the ABR window, and then it will be able to pull those through. And that might be one statement for one bank account. It might be one statement for multiple bank accounts. You can automatically or manually match the transactions ready for reconciliation. The system has a proposal functionality in there which allows the transactions to be matched off based upon date and amount. So it can automatically do that for you, or you can manually match the transactions on the GL to the statement side, or you can create your own rules, and those rules would run in advance of any other rules and do all of the applying based upon those rules, and then apply the remaining transactions based upon the standard company rules. It can easily be configured for international bank statement formats, including multi-currency. And it's ideal for the simplest of bank reconciliations, but excellent for multiple bank accounts. As I say, you can have one statement with multiple bank accounts in there, and there'll be some sort of identifier within that statement form that can allow us to determine which bank account the transactions need to be imported against. And it'd be great for your high volume transactions as well. So where you're able to create some sort of reference between them, you can create a rule that will apply those off, or allow the system to be able to carry out its standard rules to be able to do that for you. But the time saving would be greatly reduced by the system being able to take that sort of reconciliation process out for you. Some of the other features, as I said, you can upload one bank statement for multiple bank accounts. This would take the time down for reconciliation from hours down to minutes, which we've witnessed in some of our sites that have had ABR implemented. You can consolidate GL transactions based upon date, reference, amount, or check number. So, for example, when you make a payment run out of Dynamics, you may have multiple payments, typically, to different suppliers. And those would show as separate amounts on your reconciliation, sort of the standard reconciliation, and they would show as one amount typically on your statement. So what you can do is you can actually use the consolidation to be able to bring all of those payments as one amount on your GL so that you can quite easily match that off against the statement side where you also see that same amount. The ABR process supports quick journals, recurring batches and allocations for those of you that are using those types of transactions. And the correct reconciliation completion ensures all of your GL transactions are captured for reconciliation. You capture them by a date range. So all of your GL transactions are basically pulled in to the bank rec based upon a start and end date. And then you have the bank account that you want to be able to import into, so whether it's your one or multiple bank accounts. So everything between that date range gets picked up. So if it wasn't there last time you ran the bank rec, but it's been posted back, or there's been some voids or manual entries that have taken place, you can keep extracting it out so that you keep updating your GL side of things so that they're all pulled through and can all be reconciled. And only once they've been reconciled will they then be removed from the bank rec screen. And then you have the full reporting and audit information. As we'll see when we go through this, each of the transactions that are matched off have their own unique reference, and so does the reconciliation itself. Each reconciliation is numbered. So during the demo, because we're going to obviously have a look at ABR and how that works, we'll take a look at the statement import so that we can see how we can import those transactions automatically into the system. And as part of that, which is new to 2013, which is the version that I'm going to be using, there's the auto creation of transactions. And this is for interest or charges that you might have within a statement that you are not aware of until the actual statement has arrived. And what we can do is identify those types of transactions within the statement and get those to create journals for us automatically and match them off automatically when the statement is imported into the system. We can extract the GL transactions. So this is an automatic extract that we can have as opposed to the manual one that is there at the moment, and we can extract this from when the checkbook is selected and it's a setting against the checkbook. Reconciliation, we'll have a look at the consolidation of the deposits, how the proposed function works to do the automatic matching for us, how we can also do manual matching, viewing the automatically created journals from the statement import, how to do the reconcile, and the reporting that is available around that. Some of the additional features, just in addition, is really just a note to tell you that the ABR product is compatible with the Dynamics GP web client for those of you that are currently using it or thinking of using it. So, I'm going into Great Plains now, and we'll take a look at, first of all, the statement import format. Okay, so I have my format ID on here, and this is just really a match between the file that I have got created within the system. So this is basically my statement output. And what I would do is I would link the files, the columns in my dynamic system to the columns that are in my statement output. Okay, so I've got my statement output, and I'm just going to, I've got them here. Basically, If I double click on one of these, you can have a look. Okay, so basically what we'll do is we'll match up the Excel column headers. And that seems to be a blank one, so let me just delete that one. Just rename that one. As the statements get imported into the system, they're renamed. So I have a folder that contains all of my previously imported statements. So you have to keep putting the statement that you want into the location of where you want to import your file. So let me just open that one. So in here I've got the column headers, and I've got my transaction date, my account, my sort code, amount, etc., and all my references. So what I do is I basically, as you see this down there on the left, the destination field is by transaction date, which will be in column 1, the bank account 2, sort code 3, etc. So a simple mapping process takes place on here, which then allows us to say, okay, the bank account code, sort code, amount, reference, type, and check number. So it then looks to the file location and then just gives you an example of the data that you've got within that file, so you know you're looking at the right columns. And then you just say column 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Within the type, this is where you define, in this case I'm using charges and interest as an example, but these are the types of transactions that will appear on my statement that I want to generate a journal automatically. So it will put the charges to 1101 and we'll put the interest to 8020, and then the offset will go to the cash account that I'm reconciling at the time. Okay, so that's against the type and the expansion button. So before we start running the reconciliation, just take a look at the rules. So I've got a couple of rules that are set up on here. So I'm using the reconcile rule ID of CHQ, which is check, which is sort of representative of the type of transaction that I'm going to see within my statement. And what I'm doing is I'm saying, okay, well, this CHQ type transaction that's on my statement is going to link off against my PMCHK, which is payment check type transaction. Okay, so that's the statement and the GP type of transaction that it's going to look for a relationship between. And then I have my date, and that can be, I can put a negative so that it picks dates up that fall X amount of days before or after my document date. And then I can have and choose references. So I might choose a document or a check number or a reference. And then I can basically say, okay, well, the same unique, well, the same identifier exists on the statement as it does in Great Plains, but it's in a slightly different position. So in this case, I'm saying that in the statement, this number that or reference that I'm looking for is from 4 to 8 within the characters, but in GP, the actual reference is 1 to 5. So then they don't have to be both starting in exactly the same place. If it can't find a match, then I can just say when multiple transactions match, then don't match, or I can ask it to automatically match. In addition to that, I can just allow tolerance by value or percentage for the amount. Okay, then I have another one here for my deposits. Again, I'm using date. This time I'm using document check number, and both of the references actually start at the beginning. So the number that I'm capturing starts at the beginning through to character 17, and in this case it's a CRJ. So I'm going to be matching my CRJ type of transaction in Dynamics to my DEP and then statement. So these are my rules, and I want these rules to run in advance of any other rules that are on the system. So I'm going to go into my bank account. Okay, so this is on the ABR account, and this is where we link our Dynamics bank account to our ABR account. And then within here, I'm going to go to my options, and I've got reconcile rules up here. And this allows me to then define which rules I want to run against this specific bank account. So you could have different rules for different bank accounts based upon maybe the statement format that you receive. So then I've got the DEP type of reconcile rule ID that we were just looking at that's been assigned onto this particular bank account, and it will run that rule in advance of any other rules. Also, I can, against the options, go to the extract options, and this is where we can now say whether we want the transactions to be automatically extracted before reconcile, which means that when I go to open up my reconcile window, I can allow it to automatically pull through all of the GL transactions. Or I can tick that and ask for it to prompt me each time so that I get the choice of whether or not I want to run that manually for a specific date range, or whether or not I want the system to pull through everything up to the system date. I'm going to leave mine unmarked for the moment, but that's an additional option and new to GP 2013. Okay, so that's the bank account side. The next part was the deposit group. And this is where I'm using the example of a payment where we've got multiple payments going out so that we can consolidate them into one value. We can use this consolidation window. So we have the next deposit number and the format of the number that we want to see within the bank statement or on the GL side. And then we can choose our source document. So within here, I've got my sales, purchasing, financials. But I'm going to narrow it down, so I'm looking at purchasing. And this is a PM check. So when it finds the PM checks, it's going to start to want to consolidate into my deposit number. But I'm going to do multiple payment runs throughout the month, so I don't want everything being consolidated into one amount because that won't match the statement. I need to be able to group it by the batch of payments that I'm making. So I'm doing that by the GL audit trail code. I've got available fields here on the left which I can use to group them together. But I know that the GL audit trail code is specific to the batch that is being processed. So there'll just be that one payment run that's been posted against that amount. Okay, so I could have multiple deposit groups with different types of methods of grouping those. So the next step would be to extract the transactions. And this is the manual way of doing it. As we saw, we can allow it to happen automatically from the checkbook, but I'm going to put in a specific date. Okay, so I can choose which dates I want to be able to extract the transactions for. And once you have extracted the transactions, they won't pull through again once they've been, once they're already on a bank rec or they have previously been reconciled. And I also have the choice of saying, do I want to just do it for one bank, but I could do it for multiple banks. Okay, and it won't put it all onto one bank. It will split it out onto each of the banks that I'm looking at. So the extract process will run. It will go through and pick up any transactions that it needs to. Okay, so it's extracted 5 transactions there. And then I want to be able to import my statement. So I'll go to my import definition, which has been created using the file that we saw earlier. And then I'll be able to import those transactions in. Okay, so that's read my Excel file. What it's done is it's moved my file name of the firstbank.csv into firstbank extracted 0008. Okay, they're all numbered. They can be kept for your reference, but they won't be imported in twice because the data will actually be moved and that original file will be emptied, waiting for you to overwrite it with your next statement. So then we can go into the Reconcile Bank Transactions window. So I'll select the bank that I want to reconcile. And then within here, I see on the left, I see all my GL transactions, and on the right-hand side, I see all my statement transactions. what I can do at the moment, I can see because it's in bold that both sides are being sorted by transaction date. But if I wanted to sort them by reference or by amount, then I can alter what I'm actually seeing in there. The same on the right-hand side here. If I want to change whether or not I'm looking at reference or whether or not I'm looking at the document number, I can just use these arrows just to refresh the view that I'm looking at, and I can do that on either side. When I can sort of choose how I want to be able to filter some of these transactions out by. So if I'm looking by amount, as this is in bold, I can use the binoculars and I can go in and I can search for a particular amount. And then it will pull through at the top all of the transactions with that amount on. And then I can do the same on the right-hand side. Okay, and then again I can just switch those around whichever way I want to be able to view the data in there. I'm just going to do another search there for 31.95. And the reason I've just sort of picked up that value there of the 31.95, I'm just going to change that side around just so we see the same in both areas. Well, I'm going to do a match in a moment, and it's going to just basically go through and match these transactions off. And one of the things that the rules will do will actually, based upon these document numbers, which I had 1 to 17 on the deposit one, it will go through and match those transactions, or match the transactions off based upon that reference number, the date and amount. Some of these transactions where I have the same amount, they do have different dates and they have different payment numbers, and it's just really just to highlight the way that the rules work for you. So I'm going to use the propose button now. This is going to create a match based upon, first of all, the rules, because that's what I've got on the bank account, and then the company-wide rules, which is just by the date and amount. When I click on propose, it will go through and it will match off all of the transactions that I've got with the amounts on them. So when I look at the top here, and if I just sort them by the match, I've got the match IDs on there, do the same on the other side. I can see that each of the transactions it's found a match for, like 903 here, that these transactions are one of the same transactions, so it's created a match off for those. The 31.95s, I've got payment number 157 and 157 here. It's created a match number there of the 895. Now typically if I hadn't had a rule associated to my bank account, what it would have done is it would have gone through and matched them off in sort of date and amount order. So I would have had the one that's referenced here on the 11th of February for 31.95 being matched off against this item down here on the 11th of February for 31.95, despite the fact that that is reference 163 and the one up the other side here is 157. So that's where the rules come in to be able to take control and match the document numbers off for you. So once I've got the transactions that have been matched off, that is basically the legwork of the reconciliation taken away from me. So once I've done that and it's run through the rules, I could then just either just look at the matched items or I can look at the unmatched items. And then from there, if it hasn't been able to find any kind of match between those transactions, then I would be able to go ahead and match those off manually. But typically, most of the time, those transactions would match off the system, for you. So if we have a look at, and then we can just see the matched items that we have on here. The consolidated deposit is the item that I built from a payment run. So that was the deposit that we were looking at. And if I go to the Consolidate button at the top, I can go and browse out to all of the consolidations that have been created automatically for me. And I can see in here that there are actually 5 transactions that have all come together to give me the 208220 figure on here for that deposit. And the same would have applied on the right-hand side here when it has, on the 892, I've got the payment reference here. So I've got a match number of 892 and another match number of 892 on here. So it's just matched off that one figure on the statement to multiple figures that are showing as one line on my GL. And also, what we have that's being generated as part of the statement import are these bank charges. So I had some bank charges that I wanted to be created automatically off the back of the statement, and that is a result of that process. So basically it's gone through and it's created a match automatically between the bank charges. So during that statement import, it picked up that there was a deposit, so interest and charge, and it's created the journal for me automatically there on the left-hand side. If I have any searches that I want to be able to carry out, then I can use the binoculars and it picks up whatever it is that I've got defaulted here within my column. So if it's a match number that I wanted to find, that's what it would use. If it's a document number, then I would go to the binoculars after clicking on the document number, and it would allow me to filter by those options. So if I turn and have a look at the unmatched items, what you can do is it may be that there's an item on the statement side that that needs to be created as a GL transaction. So what you can do is you're able to actually click on one of the lines. So I'll choose the figure up here of the 48789, and I can put a tick in that box, and then from there I can allow that to go and create a journal for me. So once I've put a tick in the box, it will then open up a journal type screen for me. Where I'll be able to enter the amount and then post that through, and that will create a journal entry for me on the left-hand side that I can then use to be able to reconcile and match off against. Just me clicking on it one too many times, trying to get that to open up. Okay, so there's the screen. Transaction entries, journal entry window. You can put the date in of the journal. Can put any reference numbers that I want to be able to. And then it's pulled through the cash account. So from here, I just need to be able to enter the opposite side of that entry. So I'll just pick another account code on there. Okay. Okay, so then that will have created the journal entry for me. Okay, and it's already ticked it off there on the left-hand side. So all I would need to do in this case, just to match those two transactions off against one another, is click on Match. Okay, and that would be a way of manually matching them. And because I'm looking at unmatched items, it's just dropped off of the list. So then I'll be able to just deal with the other transactions that I've got in here until I'm happy that I can do the reconciliation and then clear that down. You don't have to necessarily have everything coming down to like your sort of the difference coming down to a zero balance. You can do and chip away at the reconciliation so that you can do reconcile for some items, and then you can do another reconciliation. But that's in the settings as to whether or not you do or you don't want that to happen. Okay, so once you have the reconciliation done, you'll be able to actually close and click on the reconcile window. Just one other thing to note on here is the balance date. That's because I've reconciled. There's an item that falls outside of my the date range that I've got on there. But you can see a lot of the transactions on here are dated past the date that I was actually looking at for the GL side of things. So I can change the cutoff date to be able to be a different date, so it would exclude those particular items that are on there. So anything, so for example, past the 28th of February, it would basically eliminate any of those items from the list. So I can just break those down. So I'm looking at a smaller value of transactions by date range, rather than looking at everything that's gone through the subsequent months if everything has been extracted as part of GL. So once you have your reconciliation in place and you're happy with that, then you'll be able to do a reconciliation. You do have the option to delete this. So if you weren't happy with the transactions that had been entered on the screen and you wanted to scrap it and start again, you can just delete. It will not sort of delete the GL side. It won't delete the statements. It will just delete any of the matched items that are on there. If for some reason you did need to alter the statement, then or delete the statement and re-import it in again, then you can also do that as well. Okay, so I've just clicked on the reconcile button there at the top, and that's going to basically reconcile any of the matched items. It won't reconcile any of the unmatched items. They're going to stay there. Okay. So from here, I'll say, okay, just to get the report, and I get a closing balance report and a summary of what has actually been reconciled. So it's going to go through, and it's going to show me everything that's been reconciled and what the reconcile number is. Okay, so I get a list of all of the reconciled items, and then I get a closing balance report on here as well. So I can get a list of the outstanding deposits and what the difference was at that time, and what the outstanding deposits and checks are, and the adjusted balance there at the end. Okay, those reports can be reprinted at any time, but I've still got my reconcile window open, and as you can see, it's still showing me all the items that still need to be reconciled within the system there. If I wanted to have a look at the statement, I can click on the line and I can go to the statement details. That will open up the statement that has been imported into the system. Now, if you're not doing your statements as an automatic import, then you can enter them in manually. They don't have to be imported. So you'd be able to create your own statement by entering bank accounts information and then putting in literally just sort of typing in the details there with your withdrawal or deposit information, and then the balances would also update onto your reconciliation, and then that would pull through straight away for you. Okay, so that can be done manually, but that's what's created as part of the automatic import. If you're using multi-currency and you post a transaction to your account in with a currency ID, let's say, of euros, but you're using the cash account that relates to your US bank account, what will happen when you go to extract the information, if it can't find an exchange rate, it will actually prompt you, and it'll become an exception when you go to try and extract the transactions. So where the currency is euro against your US bank account, it won't know what the exchange rate is because it's fine that it's against a that particular nominal code. It's not restricted by the currency, but the system will prompt you when you go to do the extract and ask you what exchange rate you want to be able to use for it. And then once you assign the exchange rate, it will then be able to extract those transactions into the reconciliation for you. So it will cater for those times when the transaction goes through with a different currency to the bank account currency, and then you'll be able to handle those as an exception and process the exchange rate and then extract it into Great Plains. Some of the inquiries that we have within ABR, you've got a reconcile inquiry, and this will allow you to go and look at the bank account, and then you'll be able to see this is sort of everything that has been reconciled. So from there, you'll be able to filter by transaction date, by reference, by transaction amount, and then if I go to find, then I'll be able to look for a particular amount, and I can do that within the statement window and the GL window. Or if I wanted to go by the reconciliation date, then I can change the date. It will do the sort for me within the window, but also allow me to go and filter by those particular dates. So that is for both the statement and the GL side. So as you can see, it looks very similar to the reconciliation window, and from anywhere in there I'll be able to carry out a filter or drill down, take a look at the statement that was processed as part of that reconciliation. Same token, I'd be able to go in and drill down and have a look at the GL transaction that was created as part of that transaction, which I can also do within the reconciliation window as well. There's some reports within ABR which allow you to look at the reconcile reports. So the reconcile and the closing balance reports are the ones that we just looked at within the system. But there's also reports that you can look at for bank details, closing balance or historic balances in there, any age transactions or unmatching transactions. If I wanted to see what was currently unmatched within the system, then I can take a look at those. So I just create an option for me of my unmatched items. I can then sort it by date, and I can choose that I want to look by a range of bank IDs or dates. And in the same way with any of the other standard reports, just choose your destination and then send it out to the printer. So then I've got a list of all of my unmatched items that are on here. One for my Euro bank account, and then I've got my first bank, which is my US one, and then that's giving me a list of everything that is currently unmatched and waiting to be reconciled there on that particular bank account. So there's a number of useful reports that we have on the system there. So that sort of covers the ABR elements, the main elements there to be able to do the reconciliation. So we've got our statements that can be imported manually, or we can enter them manually or import them. We've got the rules that we apply to be able to really narrow down the types of transactions that we want to have matched off, that can be set up against the bank accounts to be able to run specific rules for specific bank accounts. The deposit groups to be able to build a consolidation of transactions that have been entered through the GL. So we've got one value on the GL that will match off against the statement side. We've got the bank setup, which allows you to assign the rules and is key for doing the bank reconciliation as well. The extraction of the transactions on the GL side. So regardless of how many times you run that extraction, it will only bring in transactions that have not already been pulled through into the reconciliation window. And then you've got your statement import, which is the process of actually automatically running the statement into the reconciliation window, of which you can delete if you wanted to and re-import if something had gone wrong during that process. Then you've got the reconciliation, where you can allow the system to do the proposal and match off based upon the rules on the bank first, then the company rules, which is by date and amount. And then you have any exceptions that might be thrown up as part of the extraction process, which would be multi-currency type exceptions, where it's waiting for an exchange rate to be assigned onto your to be assigned prior to being imported and reconciled. So that is really sort of our overview of the ABR window. I'm just going to take a look and see if anyone has asked any questions during that process. I see that one of the questions is to do with the auto extracting. There's no real risk of being able to do that. It just will extract everything that hasn't already been extracted into the bank rec window. So if you really wanted to just import bite-sized pieces into the bank rec window, then you can control it more by doing it as a particular date range. But there's no sort of risk to doing it unless you're doing it for the first time, a bank rec for the very first time, and you haven't actually done any reconciliations through ABR. You would get potentially a whole year's worth, depending on how many open transactions you have, that are all pulled straight into the bank rec screen. So you wouldn't want that to be switched on initially, but that would be part of the take-on process. But you can have a cut-off date, so if it does import transactions into September when you're just reconciling August, then you can put a cut-off date in there and do it that way. So it's just really just controlling the dates or whether or not you're happy to import them in automatically. If you have voids that are being processed through, you'll see them on the GL side, on the left-hand side. So if you'll see the entry in and then you'll see the entry out, you just reconcile them off on the GL side, and then that will net off, and you match them in the same way, and then they'll be reconciled off. So the voids are handled within that process, so that's not a problem. If anyone else has any other questions that are, then please obviously process those through. If I haven't answered any of the questions that are on there, then I can just drop an email through, and we'll be able to answer any other questions that you think of afterwards that I haven't answered as part of this webinar. So I'll just put the information. Look just at the email address onto the screen there, so that you can reply. So there seems to be a bit of a delay going on with the screen, but you'll be able to send an email over to Steph Cranstone, and then any other questions would be able to be answered by myself or by one of my colleagues. But thank you very much for attending and for your patience in the early start of this, on the late start, should I say, of this webinar. Thank you. Bye-bye.